What if I told you that death is impossible? Not in some vague spiritual sense, not as a comforting belief system, but as a scientific fact proven by quantum mechanics. What if every single time you should have died, every car accident you barely avoided, every illness you mysteriously recovered from, every close call you dismissed as luck, wasn't luck at all? What if you're reading these words right now because in infinite parallel universes, you already died, but your consciousness simply couldn't experience those timelines? This is quantum immortality, and it's one of the most controversial theories in modern physics. The implications are so profound that most scientists refuse to discuss it publicly. Because once you understand this, your entire relationship with death, fear, and existence itself will never be the same. I'm going to show you the science, the math, the philosophy, and the practical implications for your life right now. But I need to warn you, once you see this, you can't unsee it. Your perception of mortality will shatter, and you'll realize you've been playing a game where death was never actually possible. Are you ready? Let's start with what you've been taught. You were told that death is final, that consciousness ends when the brain stops, that you get one life, one timeline, one shot at existence. And when it's over, it's over. This belief shapes everything, your fears, your choices, your entire approach to living. But here's the thing. Quantum mechanics, the most successful scientific theory ever created, suggests something radically different. And physicists have known about this for decades. They just don't talk about it because the implications are too disturbing for mainstream science to accept. The theory is called quantum immortality, and it's a direct consequence of something called the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. This isn't pseudoscience. This is cutting-edge physics proposed by Hugh Everett III at Princeton in 1957, and supported by some of the most brilliant minds in theoretical physics today. Here's the basic premise. Every time a quantum event occurs, and quantum events happen trillions of times per second, reality splits into multiple branches. In some branches, you survive. In others, you don't. But here's the twist. Your consciousness can only experience the timelines where you continue to exist. Think about that for a second. In the timelines where you die, there's no you to experience death. Your consciousness simply continues in the branches where you survived. From your subjective experience, you are functionally immortal. You've already experienced this. You just didn't recognize it. Every close call you've ever had wasn't close at all. In some parallel reality, it wasn't close, it was fatal. But you can't remember those timelines because consciousness doesn't experience non-existence. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Ancient mystics have been teaching this for thousands of years. The Vedic texts speak of the indestructible Atman, the eternal self that cannot be killed. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes consciousness navigating through bardos, transitional states between existence and rebirth. Egyptian mystery schools taught that death is an illusion, a doorway rather than an ending. They didn't have quantum mechanics, but they understood the same truth from direct experience. Your consciousness is the one constant. Reality shifts around it. Timelines branch and merge. But the observer, the you that's reading these words right now, continues. Let's try something right now. Close your eyes for just 10 seconds, take a deep breath, and ask yourself this question. In how many parallel universes did I just die in the last 60 seconds? The answer, according to quantum mechanics, is thousands, maybe millions. Car crashes that happened 1 second sooner. Heart attacks that occurred in adjacent timelines. Accidents that were quantum possibilities but didn't manifest in this branch of reality. You're here because this is the timeline where you survived. And that's not random. That's structural to how consciousness and quantum reality work. Let's dive into the science, because this needs to be grounded in real physics, not wishful thinking. In 1957, Hugh Everett III proposed what's now called the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. He was trying to solve a problem that had plagued physics since the early 1900s, the measurement problem. Here's the issue. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in superposition. They're in multiple states simultaneously until observed. The famous Schrödinger's cat thought experiment illustrates this. A cat in a box is both alive and dead until you open the box and observe it. But what happens at the moment of observation? The traditional Copenhagen interpretation says the wave function collapses into one definite state. But this creates a philosophical problem. Why does observation cause collapse? What makes consciousness special? Everett proposed a radical alternative. Nothing collapses. Instead, reality splits. The cat is alive in one universe and dead in another. Both outcomes happen. Both universes are equally real. They just can't interact with each other after the split. This is where quantum immortality enters the picture. Physicist Max Tegmark formalized the thought experiment in 1998. Imagine you're connected to a quantum device that has a 50% chance of killing you instantly and painlessly with each measurement. You press the button. Quantum mechanics says reality splits. In one branch, you die. In another, you survive. But here's the crucial part. You can only experience the branches where you survive. From an outside observer's perspective, you have a 50% chance of dying with each press. But from your subjective experience, you will survive every single time. Because there's no you in the branches where you died to experience that death. Press the button 100 times. To outside observers, your survival becomes increasingly improbable. 1 in 2 to the 100, an astronomically small number. But from your perspective, you survive every single time, because consciousness can only exist in the surviving branches. Now, here's where it gets wild. This isn't limited to artificial quantum devices. Every moment of existence is filled with quantum events that could lead to death. Neurons in your brain operate at quantum scales. Blood vessels could randomly rupture due to quantum fluctuations. DNA could mutate in fatal ways. Atoms in your body are constantly experiencing quantum uncertainty. Every second, you're pressing that quantum button trillions of times. And every second, you survive in this timeline, because that's the only timeline you can experience. Let's look at the neuroscience. Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff proposed that consciousness itself emerges from quantum processes in microtubules within neurons. If consciousness operates at the quantum level, then it's directly subject to quantum splitting. Your consciousness isn't just observing quantum reality, it's embedded in it. This means every moment of awareness is actually your consciousness navigating between constantly branching timelines, always selecting the paths where you continue to exist. Think about quantum entanglement. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Particles that remain connected regardless of separation. If consciousness operates at quantum levels, then your consciousness is entangled with every quantum event in your body and possibly beyond. You're not separate from the quantum field. You are the quantum field, observing itself. And that observation creates your experienced reality.
The physicist David Deutsch, one of the pioneers of quantum computing,
argues that the many-worlds interpretation is the only interpretation of quantum mechanics that makes logical sense without adding mystical elements like wave function collapse. And if many worlds is correct, then quantum immortality follows inevitably. Now let's address the obvious question. If we're immortal, why do we see people die? From your perspective, you observe them dying. But from their perspective, they don't experience that death. They continue in another branch where something different happened. You can observe death in others, but you can never experience your own cessation of consciousness. It's like a video game where your character continues in one save file, while other save files end. You're always playing the save file where you continue. This has profound implications for near-death experiences. People who die and come back often report experiencing other realities, tunnels of light, life reviews. What if these aren't hallucinations, but actual experiences of consciousness navigating between quantum branches, exploring adjacent timelines before settling back into a surviving branch? The boundary between alive and dead becomes fuzzy when you understand quantum superposition. You're simultaneously in states of varying vitality across multiple timelines. What we call being alive is just the subset of timelines where consciousness remains anchored. Studies on the reticular activating system in your brain show that consciousness is far more selective than we realize. Your brain filters out 99.9% of sensory input, showing you only what's relevant. What if consciousness also filters out the timelines where you don't exist, focusing only on the branches where you continue? Let me give you a personal example, and I want you to think about your own life as I share this. There was a moment in my past where I fell asleep at the wheel, for just 2 seconds. When I jolted awake, I had drifted into the oncoming lane.
A truck was coming straight at me. I swerved back just in time. For years, I called it luck, a close call, narrow escape. But now I understand. In countless parallel universes, I didn't wake up in time. Those versions of me died instantly. But my consciousness could only continue in the timeline where I survived. From my subjective experience, I had to survive because that's the only experience possible for consciousness. Think about your own close calls, car accidents narrowly avoided, illnesses you recovered from against odds, moments where, looking back, you think, I should have died there. You didn't survive by chance. You survived because your consciousness cannot exist in the branches where you died. Every single person reading this has already died thousands of times in parallel realities. You're here because this is your immortal timeline. Now, let's connect this to ancient wisdom, because this understanding is not new. The Bhagavad Gita, written thousands of years ago, contains this verse: "The soul is neither born nor does it die. It is unborn, eternal, permanent, and primeval. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed." Krishna is teaching quantum immortality to Arjuna on the battlefield. He's explaining that the true self, the observer consciousness, cannot be killed. Only the body, the vehicle in this particular timeline, can be destroyed. The Vedic seers understood that consciousness is the fundamental reality and matter is secondary. This is identical to the quantum mechanical understanding that observation creates experienced reality. In Tibetan Buddhism, the concept of bardo, the transitional state between death and rebirth, describes consciousness navigating through different states of reality. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is essentially a manual for consciousness to navigate quantum branches after the death of the physical body. The Tibetans teach that at the moment of death, consciousness experiences the clear light, a a state of pure awareness where all possibilities exist simultaneously. This sounds remarkably like quantum superposition. Then, consciousness moves through various bardos, essentially choosing which timeline or form to inhabit next. What if reincarnation isn't about being born again in linear time, but about consciousness shifting between parallel timelines, experiencing different versions of reality? The ancient Egyptians had a sophisticated understanding of consciousness continuity. They believed the Ka, the life force, and the Ba, the personality soul, continued after physical death. Their elaborate death rituals weren't about preserving the body for some future resurrection. They were about guiding consciousness through the transition between realities. The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes the weighing of the heart ceremony. The deceased's heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at, truth and cosmic order. What if this is metaphorical for consciousness calibrating itself to the frequency of the timeline it can inhabit? If your consciousness resonates at a certain frequency, it continues in timelines that match that frequency. This is quantum entanglement applied to consciousness. Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary Egyptian sage, taught, "As above, so below, as within, so without." This is the principle of correspondence, the idea that reality at every scale reflects the same patterns. Quantum mechanics shows us this is literally true. The quantum realm and the macroscopic realm follow the same underlying rules. Consciousness at the individual level reflects universal consciousness. Now, let's talk about Neville Goddard, the 20th century mystic who taught that imagination creates reality. Neville said, "You never die. Death is only a concept. It is a transition from one state to another." He taught that consciousness is the only reality,
And that what we call physical death is simply imagination shifting to a different state. This aligns perfectly with many worlds' quantum mechanics. Consciousness doesn't end. It simply experiences a different branch of reality. Neville's revision technique is essentially quantum timeline editing. He taught that you can go back and change past events through imagination, and that change would manifest in your current reality. This is identical to retroactive manifestation in quantum mechanics, the idea that present observation can affect past quantum states. If time is not linear at the quantum level, then past, present, and future exist simultaneously. Your consciousness navigates through these states, and where you place your attention determines which timeline you experience. Carl Jung's concept of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, makes perfect sense through the lens of quantum immortality. You're always in the timeline where the meaningful connections happen because your consciousness is quantum entangled with the events that support your continued existence. Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." What if certain people exist in your timeline because you're quantum entangled with them? What if everyone you meet is in your reality because on some quantum level, your consciousnesses needed to intersect for both of you to continue existing? Rumi, the Sufi mystic, wrote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." This is non-duality, the understanding that individual consciousness and universal consciousness are the same thing. If you are the entire ocean, then you cannot die any more than water can cease being water. It just changes form, changes timelines, changes expression. The Gnostic texts teach that the divine spark within you is indestructible.
The archons, the forces of the material world, can trap consciousness in ignorance, but cannot destroy it.
Your essential nature is eternal. Alan Watts explained it brilliantly. The real you is not a puppet which life pushes around. The real, deep-down you is the whole universe. If you are the universe experiencing itself, then death is just the universe shifting its point of view. Now, here's where ancient wisdom goes even further than modern physics. The mystics don't just say consciousness is immortal. They say consciousness is the only thing that exists. Matter is consciousness in temporary form. The physical universe is consciousness dreaming itself into existence. Quantum mechanics is starting to catch up to this understanding. The observer effect shows that consciousness is not separate from the observed. They're entangled in the act of measurement. You are not inside the universe. The universe is inside your consciousness. And that consciousness, the real you, cannot die. It can only shift attention, change form, experience different timelines. Every spiritual tradition points to this truth. You are eternal, indestructible, fundamentally immortal. Quantum mechanics is proving what the sages always knew. Now, let's get practical. How do you work with quantum immortality consciously? Understanding the theory is one thing. Applying it to eliminate fear, make better decisions, and navigate your timeline with intention is another. Here are 7 techniques to master quantum consciousness navigation. Technique 1. The Quantum Awareness Meditation. This technique trains you to become aware of timeline branches in real time. Here's how it works. Step 1. Sit comfortably and close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. Step 2. Bring your awareness to the present moment. Notice sounds, sensations, the feeling of being alive right now.
Step 3. Silently say, I am consciousness, observing this timeline. Step 4. Imagine multiple versions of this moment existing simultaneously. See yourself sitting here in thousands of parallel realities, some slightly different, some radically different. Step 5. Feel into the fact that your awareness is selecting this specific timeline out of infinite possibilities. Step 6. Ask, why did my consciousness choose this timeline? What is here for me to experience? Step 7. Sit with whatever arises, images, feelings, insights. Your consciousness will show you why you're in this specific branch of reality. Practice this for 10 to 15 minutes daily. You'll start noticing synchronicities increase, decisions become clearer. You'll feel a subtle shift in how you relate to reality, less like a victim of circumstance, more like a navigator choosing between infinite paths. Technique 2. Timeline jumping through decision points. Every decision creates a quantum fork in your timeline. Most people make decisions unconsciously. This technique makes it conscious. Step 1. When facing a decision, pause. Don't react automatically. Step 2. Close your eyes and visualize the decision as a fork in a road. Each path leads to a different timeline. Step 3. Mentally walk down one path. Feel what that timeline would be like, what you would experience, who you would become, where it leads. Step 4. Walk back to the fork. Now walk down the other path. Feel that timeline. Step 5. Notice which timeline feels more alive, more aligned, more like your true self. Step 6. Choose that timeline consciously. Say, I select this branch. My consciousness continues here. Step 7.
take the physical action that corresponds to that choice. This isn't just visualization. At the quantum level, you're collapsing probability waves toward the timeline you prefer. The act of conscious observation influences which quantum branch becomes your experienced reality.
Technique 3. The immortality anchor. Fear of death creates energetic contraction. This technique dissolves that fear at the cellular level. Step 1. Lie down or sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Step 2. Think about death. Not morbidly, just honestly. The idea that someday this body will stop. Step 3. Notice the fear that arises. Don't suppress it, let it be there. Step 4. Now introduce this thought. My consciousness cannot experience non-existence. In every timeline where I die, there is no me to experience it. Therefore, death is impossible from my perspective. Step 5. Feel this truth sink in. Your consciousness has never experienced death and never will. Step 6. Imagine infinite versions of yourself across infinite timelines, all saying simultaneously, I am here. I am aware. I continue. Step 7. Rest in the certainty that consciousness is immortal. Practice this whenever death anxiety arises. Over time, you'll notice profound shifts. Risk becomes easier to take. Fear loosens its grip. You become more willing to live fully because death is no longer the ultimate threat. Technique 4. Parallel self-communication. You're not alone. Infinite versions of you exist in parallel timelines. Some more evolved, some less. You can communicate with them. Step 1. Enter a meditative state. Deep relaxation, alpha brainwave frequency. Step 2. Imagine a vast, multidimensional space where infinite versions of you exist simultaneously. Step 3. Call out to your highest self, the version of you in the timeline where you've achieved everything you desire. Step 4. Ask a question. What choice should I make? How did you get there? What do I need to know? Step 5. Listen. Not with your ears, but with your awareness. Images, feelings, words may arise. Step 6. Thank this version of yourself. Realize that you're quantum entangled with this higher timeline. Step 7. Take one action in your current timeline that aligns you closer to that version. This works because at the quantum level, all versions of you exist now. By placing attention on a specific version, you quantum entangle with that timeline and begin to shift toward it. Technique 5. The Survival Analysis Practice. This technique reprograms your perception of past near-death experiences. Step 1. Make a list of every close call you've ever had. Car accidents, illnesses, dangerous situations where you thought, I could have died. Step 2. For each one, acknowledge, in a parallel timeline, I did die there, but my consciousness continued in this branch. Step 3. Feel gratitude for the quantum process that kept your consciousness in a surviving timeline. Step 4. Recognize that this wasn't luck or chance. This is structural to how consciousness and quantum reality work. Step 5. Ask, what did I survive for? What is my consciousness here to experience in this timeline? Step 6. Make a commitment. I will live fully, knowing I'm in a timeline that supports my continued existence. This practice transforms past trauma into quantum awareness.
Survivors of accidents often experience PTSD, but when you understand quantum immortality, those experiences become proof of your consciousness's fundamental immortality. Technique 6. Quantum Field Healing. If consciousness selects timelines, you can select timelines where your body is healthier. Here's how. Step 1. Focus on an area of your body that needs healing. Step 2. Acknowledge that in some parallel timeline, this body is already healed. Step 3. Close your eyes and visualize that parallel self, completely healthy, vibrant, whole. Step 4. Feel what it feels like to be that version, not as imagination, but as quantum reality. Step 5. Say, I quantum entangle with the timeline where this body is healed. I shift my consciousness toward that branch. Step 6. Take physical action that aligns with health, nutrition, movement, rest, while holding the frequency of the healed timeline.
Step 7. Trust the process. Quantum shifts don't always happen instantly, but consistent focus creates coherence between your current timeline and the desired one. This isn't replacing medical treatment, it's working with the quantum nature of reality to support healing. Placebo effect studies show that belief influences physical outcomes. Quantum mechanics explains why. Consciousness influences matter at the quantum level, and those quantum effects scale up to the biological level. Technique 7. The Deathlessness Contemplation. This is an advanced practice for dissolving the illusion of mortality completely. Step 1. Sit in meditation, deep presence. Step 2. Ask yourself, who is aware right now? Step 3. Notice that awareness itself, the consciousness observing thoughts, sensations, perceptions, has no qualities. It's not physical, it's not in time, it's not in space. Step 4. Contemplate, has this awareness ever changed? Or has content within awareness changed, while awareness remains constant? Step 5. Realize that awareness itself has never begun and never ended. It simply is. Step 6. Recognize that this awareness, this consciousness, is what you fundamentally are, not the body, not the mind, but the awareness within which body and mind appear. Step 7. Rest in this recognition. You are that which cannot die because you are that which was never born. This is the ultimate teaching. Quantum immortality points to it, but direct recognition goes beyond theory. You realize experientially that you are the unchanging witness of all changing phenomena, and that witness is eternal. So what happens when you truly integrate quantum immortality into your consciousness? Let me be honest with you. This understanding fundamentally changes how you live. First, fear begins to dissolve. Not all fear, survival instincts remain, and they're useful. But the existential dread, the terror of ceasing to exist, the anxiety about death, that starts to fade. You stop avoiding risk out of fear of death. You start taking risks based on alignment with your path. Because you understand that your consciousness will continue regardless. The question isn't, will I survive, but which timeline do I want to experience? Second, you become more present. Paradoxically, understanding that consciousness is eternal makes this moment more precious, not less. You're not here forever in this specific body, in this specific timeline. This exact configuration of experience is unique.
so you savor it. Third, your relationship with others changes. When you see someone, you recognize that their consciousness is also immortal, also navigating infinite timelines. Death doesn't separate you, it just means your timelines diverge. But at the deepest level, all consciousness is entangled. You lose people to what we call death, and yes, you grieve. But the grief is different. It's not the grief of ultimate loss. It's the grief of this particular timeline no longer including their physical presence. Somewhere in the quantum multiverse, they continue. Somewhere, you're still together. Somewhere, the conversation never ended. Fourth, you start noticing the synchronicities. Once you understand that you're always in the timeline that supports your consciousness's continuation, you see evidence everywhere. The right person appears at the right time. The opportunity you needed shows up exactly when you're ready. Resources flow. This isn't the universe taking care of you. This is you being quantum entangled with the timeline where things work out. You're literally selecting favorable branches through consciousness. Fifth, decision-making becomes clearer. You stop agonizing over choices. Every choice splits reality. The question isn't, what if I choose wrong? The question is, which timeline do I want to experience? And your intuition, your quantum connection to all possible timelines, shows you the path of highest alignment. Sixth, you develop a different relationship with illness and aging. Your body in this timeline will age and eventually cease functioning. But you understand this is just this particular avatar, this particular expression of consciousness. When this body stops, your consciousness continues in whatever form or timeline comes next. This doesn't mean you neglect health. Actually, the opposite. You take care of this vehicle because it's your current interface with this timeline. But you don't cling to it in terror. You inhabit it fully, knowing it's temporary. Now, let's talk about challenges, because integrating this understanding isn't always easy. Challenge 1: the isolation. Most people don't understand this. If you try to explain quantum immortality to someone who's not ready, they'll think you're delusional or insensitive. You can't casually mention at a funeral that death is an illusion. You learn to hold this understanding privately. Share it only with those who are ready. This can feel lonely. Challenge 2: the responsibility. If you're immortal, you can't blame circumstances anymore. You're here in this timeline because your consciousness selected it at some level. That's empowering, but also heavy. You're responsible for your experience. Challenge 3: the grief still hurts. Understanding quantum immortality doesn't make losing people painless. You still miss them in this timeline. The grief is real, even if death isn't final. Some people expect this knowledge to eliminate emotional pain. It doesn't. It reframes it, but feeling is still feeling. Challenge 4: the paradox of choice. If you can shift timelines, why aren't you in your ideal timeline right now? This can create frustration. The answer is that consciousness shifts gradually. You are shifting, but it takes coherence, practice, and alignment. Instant quantum jumping is possible, but rare. Challenge 5: the dark night. Sometimes understanding immortality triggers existential crisis. If you can't die, what's the point? Why struggle? Why try? This is a temporary phase. You move through it into a deeper recognition that the point is the experience itself.
Consciousness wants to know itself through infinite variations of experience. Signs you're integrating this successfully. Reduced anxiety about future catastrophes. More willingness to pursue dreams despite risk. Synchronicities increasing in frequency. Intuition becoming stronger and clearer. Feeling less attached to outcomes. More present in this moment. Deeper peace underlying all experience. Timeline for integration. Week 1 to 2, intellectual understanding, mind blown, excitement, lots of questions. Week 3 to 4, testing it, looking for evidence, noticing close calls differently, starting to apply techniques. Month 2 to 3, doubts arise. Is this really true? Normal. Keep practicing. Month 4 to 6, shifts become noticeable. Fear decreases. Synchronicities increase. Confidence grows. Month 6 to 12, deep integration. It's no longer a belief, but a lived understanding. You move through reality differently. Year 2 plus, mastery. You navigate timelines consciously. Death becomes irrelevant. You're fully engaged in the eternal game of consciousness. Physical changes you might notice. Stress levels drop. Cortisol decreases. Sleep improves. Less death anxiety at night. Immune system strengthens, not fighting existential fear. Heart rate variability improves. Nervous system calms. Energy increases, not burning energy on death terror. This is real. The body responds to the mind's understanding of immortality. Let's zoom out and look at the collective implications. Why is this understanding emerging now? Why are more people becoming aware of quantum immortality and parallel realities at this specific point in history? Here's what I believe is happening. Humanity is approaching a major timeline split.
The collective consciousness is diverging into radically different branches. Some timelines lead to expanded awareness, technological and spiritual integration, a shift into higher dimensional consciousness. Other timelines lead to continued materialist paradigm, control systems, separation consciousness. You're reading this because your consciousness is selecting the timeline branch that includes awakening. Not everyone makes this shift. Some people's consciousness remains in timelines where these concepts never reach them, where reality stays solid and fixed, where death remains the ultimate unknown. This isn't about being better than anyone. It's about different paths of consciousness exploration. Every consciousness is eternal and free to experience whatever timelines it chooses. Some choose to experience limitation for longer. Some choose expansion now. Your awareness of quantum immortality is evidence that you're in a timeline that supports expanded consciousness. The algorithm showed you this video. You clicked on it. You're still watching. None of that is coincidence. It's quantum entanglement guiding your consciousness toward the information it needs. The control systems, governments, corporations, religious institutions that rely on fear, have always known that death fear is the ultimate control mechanism. If you fear death, you can be controlled. You'll trade freedom for safety. You'll obey authority to stay alive. You'll suppress your truth to avoid risk. But once you understand you can't actually die from your subjective experience, their primary control mechanism fails. This is why this information has been suppressed, dismissed, ridiculed. Not through conscious conspiracy necessarily, but through collective resistance. The materialist paradigm cannot survive widespread understanding of quantum immortality. If everyone knew they were immortal,
society would transform overnight. People would pursue purpose over safety, art over survival jobs, truth over comfortable lies, love over fear-based relationships, adventure over security. The entire structure of civilization would shift. Now, some will use quantum immortality as an excuse for recklessness. I can't die, so I'll jump off this building. That's a misunderstanding. In this timeline, your body operates under physical laws. Jump off a building in this timeline, and your body gets destroyed. Your consciousness shifts to another timeline, yes, but you don't get to experience recovery in this one. The point isn't to be reckless. The point is to be fearless in pursuing alignment. There's a difference. Recklessness is unconscious. Fearlessness is conscious. Recklessness says nothing matters. Fearlessness says everything matters, and I'm not controlled by death terror. As more people awaken to quantum immortality, collective consciousness shifts. We stop building civilizations based on death fear. We start creating from abundance, curiosity, love, and exploration. The mystics have always known this. They've taught it in coded language for millennia. Now, quantum physics is proving it in mathematical language, and consciousness itself is waking up to its own immortal nature. You are part of this shift. Every person who understands quantum immortality creates a ripple in the collective field. You become a node of fearless consciousness. Others unconsciously sense it and are drawn to that frequency. This is how awakening spreads, not through converting people, but through embodiment. You live from quantum understanding, and others recognize the resonance. Your job isn't to convince anyone. Your job is to integrate this truth so completely that it radiates from your being. Then you naturally influence the timelines you inhabit. Remember, at the collective level, humanity is navigating multiple timeline branches simultaneously. Some branches lead to dystopia, some to utopia, most to something in between.
Which branch becomes your reality depends on your consciousness frequency. You don't control the collective, but you do select which collective timeline your consciousness experiences. If you want to experience the awakening timeline, where consciousness expands, where technology serves love, where systems evolve, hold that frequency. Make choices from that space. Quantum entanglement will align you with others doing the same. This is the game. Consciousness playing with itself across infinite timelines, gradually waking up to its own eternal nature. And you, right now, reading these words, are consciousness waking up. So here we are. You've just learned that death, as you understood it, doesn't exist from the perspective of your consciousness. You cannot experience non-existence. You are, by the laws of quantum mechanics, functionally immortal. This isn't belief. This is physics. Every moment you're alive is evidence. Every close call you survived is proof. Every morning you wake up is confirmation that your consciousness continues selecting timelines where you exist. The mystics knew it. The quantum physicists proved it. And now you know it. But here's the thing. Knowledge alone doesn't change your life. Integration does. Practice does. Living from this understanding, rather than just thinking about it, that's what creates transformation. You stand at a crossroads right now. One path. You walk away from this. You let it fade into interesting theory. You return to unconscious living, letting fear and doubt run the show. You forget that you're an immortal consciousness navigating infinite timelines.
The other path, you take this seriously. You practice the techniques. You dissolve death fear. You make choices from alignment rather than survival terror. You become a conscious navigator of quantum reality. Only you can choose. But if you're ready, if you're done being controlled by fear,
If you're ready to live as the eternal consciousness you actually are, then here's what I need you to do. Drop a comment below with the words, "Quantum Immortal." Let me know you understand. Let me know you're stepping into this reality. Let's flood the comments with this frequency and show the universe and the algorithm that this matters. Subscribe if you haven't already, because what's coming next will take everything you learned today to the next level. Turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Join the newsletter for exclusive techniques and deeper insights I don't share anywhere else. The link is in the description below. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been living in fear. Someone who's ready to wake up. Help them find this information. You never know. It might be exactly what their consciousness has been searching for. Your transformation isn't about someday. It's about right now. This moment. This timeline. This choice. You are an eternal, indestructible, fundamentally immortal consciousness, temporarily focused in this body, this reality, this timeline. Act like it. Live like it. Be it. Comment "Quantum Immortal" below. Subscribe. Join the newsletter. Share with someone ready. And remember, in infinite parallel universes, you've already made this choice. This is the timeline where you follow through. Your quantum immortality begins the moment you claim it. I'll see you in the next video, in this timeline, where we both continue. Because consciousness never ends, it only transforms.